Behind my barn there is a food forest. I planted it one time 9 years ago. I have not bought a single bag of feed for my 40 hens since. It regrows itself every spring on its own and will feed that flock free for the rest of my life. Most folks would drive right past it and call it a mess. That mess is the most valuable half-acre on my whole place. 40 hens, one planting, 9 years, not $1 to the feed mill. If you keep chickens, you feel it already. The feed bag costs more and weighs less every season, and your whole flock is only as safe as your next trip to town. You do not own those birds. You rent them by the week from the mill. My name is Levi. My wife Sarah and I work a small Amish farm, the same ground my grandfather worked before me. Before I show you a single thing, do me one kindness, hit subscribe, because these old ways need somewhere to live after I am gone. That is the only payment I will ever ask. Now here is the whole idea, the one the Amish never needed a feed store to know. A food forest is not a garden you weed and harvest by the bucket. It is a stack of plants from tall trees down to ground cover that you plant one time. It regrows every spring on its own, and the chickens harvest it themselves. The setup is the only real work. Done right, it feeds a hen everything a bag does: grain, protein, and greens for free, year after year. So here are the 7 layers that make it work, the one tree that outfeeds them all. The bush several states have made it illegal to plant, and the mistake that kills most food forests in their first year. Let us start at the top. Layer 1 is the canopy, the tall trees, and the king of the whole chicken food forest, the one tree that outfeeds everything else combined, is the mulberry. I mean that plainly. A mature mulberry drops fruit for 3 to 6 weeks straight, pounds of it a day, and the hens clean it off the ground like it is candy. But the fruit is the small part. Mulberry leaves run north of 20% protein, higher than most of what is in your sack of layer feed, and the tree throws those leaves down all season long. One mulberry tree is a protein factory that runs on sunlight and rain and asks you for nothing. My grandfather planted 2 of them. I have never once regretted the ground they take. Layer 2 is the understory, the smaller trees under the big ones. Hazelnut, persimmon, a second mulberry kept low. Hazelnuts drop nuts a hen cracks for fat and protein heading into winter. Persimmon hangs sweet fruit long after the first frost, dropping it slow when everything else is done. This layer stretches your season on both ends. Layer 3 is the shrubs waist to head high. Elderberry, currants, sea buckthorn, and the one I saved this spot for, autumn olive. Now listen close, because this is the bush they outlawed. Several states have put autumn olive on the ban list. You cannot buy it. You cannot sell it. And in some places they will order you to tear it out of the ground. So why would a humble berry bush scare them that badly? Because it works too well. A single autumn olive drops tens of pounds of small red berries your hens will gorge on for weeks, and it pulls its own nitrogen straight out of the air to feed every other plant in the forest around it. Free fertilizer and free feed, off the same bush, year after year. I will give you the honest reason they banned it before this is over, and it is not the one you would guess. For now, just know it earns its keep like nothing else here. Layer 4 is the herbs, and this is where the real protein lives, so listen close. First, comfrey. Comfrey roots dive 10 feet down, pull up minerals no other plant reaches, and the leaves come back again and again after every cutting, around 20% protein. You cut it, you drop it on the ground, it rots, and it feeds the engine I am about to tell you about. Alongside it you put sunflowers, amaranth, and sorghum, tall plants that stand up in fall loaded with seed heads. That is your grain. That is your scratch, growing on a stalk instead of sitting in a sack. And now the engine itself, the piece almost everyone misses. A hen is not a vegetarian. Out in the wild she eats bugs. That is where a real egg comes from. A food forest is a bug factory running day and night. Every fallen leaf, every cut comfrey stalk, every bit of mulch rots down into the soil and feeds worms, grubs, beetles, and slugs by the thousand. The chickens scratch through that litter all day long and pull out live protein you never bought and never will. The deeper your mulch, the more bugs, the more eggs. You are not really feeding chickens. You are feeding the soil and the soil feeds the chickens. Layer 5 is the ground cover, the living carpet under it all. White clover, alfalfa, and chicory. Clover stays green most of the year. The hens graze it down like little cattle, and it pumps nitrogen back into the dirt so the whole forest grows harder without a bag of fertilizer ever touching it. This carpet is what keeps them fed on the ordinary days, the stretches between the gluts of fruit and the rush of fall seed. Layer 6 is the vines, the vertical layer that uses the air you were wasting. Grapes and hardy kiwi climb the trees and the fences and drop fruit from up high in late summer. They take up no ground at all and add one more course to the table. Now stop and count what we have built. Fruit, nuts, berries, protein greens, live bugs, grain, green grays. We have rebuilt the whole feed bag out of plants that come back on their own for free every year. But the system is not finished, and the two pieces left are the ones most people get dead wrong. The winter and the calcium. This is the line where a food forest either becomes a real system you trust your flock to, or stays a pretty summer hobby that quits on you in November. Layer 7 is the roots, the part that wins you the winter. Sunchokes, Jerusalem artichokes grow like a weed, store their whole harvest underground in tubers, and a hard frost only makes them sweeter. They sit in the ground through the cold, and the hens dig them as they need them. Then squash and pumpkins, grown along the sunny edges, store for months up in the barn. You split one open on a freezing day and the whole flock empties it down to the rind. That is how you carry feed past the first frost without opening a single bag. 7 layers, top to bottom, and the whole patch is working for you. Now calcium. This is the one the food forest does not fully solve, and I will not lie to you about it, because a man who lies to you about the small things cannot be trusted on the big ones. A laying hen needs calcium for her shells. Greens and bugs help, but the surest source is still crushed oyster shell, or her own eggshells baked and crushed and set out for her. It costs a few dollars a year. I keep a small pan of it by the coop. Everything else on this list the land grows. That one it does not, so I will not pretend it does. Before I show you the mistake that kills most of these in year 1, if this is helping you, tap the like button so it carries to another family still hauling feed sacks every week. That is the only reason I make these. Right, back to it. Here is the mistake. It is the reason most food forests are dead by the end of the first year, and it has nothing to do with the plants. People put the trees in the ground, and that very same week, they turn the chickens loose into it. And the chickens do exactly what God built them to do. They scratch every young seedling clean out of the dirt. They strip the soft bark off the new trunks. They eat the clover down to bare ground before it ever sets a root. By fall, the whole planting is dead, and the man blames the idea. The idea was never the problem. The timing was. A food forest has to be established before the flock is ever allowed to harvest it. You fence the chickens out for the first 1 to 2 seasons. You let the trees climb above pecking height. You let the clover root deep and the comfrey set its crown. Then and only then you open the gate. After that, the system is tough enough to take their scratching forever, and the scratching actually helps it, turning the litter, spreading the seed, working the bugs up to the surface. Get the timing wrong and you lose a year and your faith in it. Get it right, one single time, and it feeds them for the rest of your life. How much ground does it take? Plan on roughly 250 to 400 square feet of established forest for each bird if you wanted to carry most of their feed. Less, if you only mean to cut the bill in half. More if you want them clean off the bag. On our half-acre, 40 hens live off that patch spring straight through fall, and lean on stored squash, sunchokes, and a little grain through the deep cold. Our feed bill went from the better part of $100 a month down to a few dollars of oyster shell in a year. A season or 2 of patience, paid one time, for a lifetime of feed that grows itself. So here is the honest reckoning, because you have earned it. Start with the bush they banned. The real reason autumn olive landed on those lists is not a profit conspiracy. It just grows so fast and seeds so freely that birds carry it into the wild, and it crowds out native plants. That is the whole irony. The very thing that got it banned is the thing that makes it feed your flock forever and ask nothing back. So keep it contained, prune it, pick it, and never plant it if your state prohibits it. Do not break a law over a berry bush. If it is banned where you live, plant Siberian pea shrub instead, same nitrogen, seeds better than a third protein, legal everywhere. Now the rest of the honest part. This is not instant. The trees take 2 to 3 years to really start dropping in earnest. That first season is real work, planting, fencing, watering the young stock through a dry spell. And in the deep of a hard northern winter, when everything is buried under snow, you will still carry some feed out. The forest carries them most of the year, not every last day of it. It asks for that little pan of calcium on the side. But what it gives back is a flock that feeds itself. Eggs with deep orange yolks you cannot buy at any store, soil that gets richer every year instead of poorer, and a feed bill that all but disappears. Plant it once. Tend it 2 years. Then let it feed them for 20. If you keep chickens, do not try to build all 7 layers tomorrow. Start with 1 mulberry tree and a patch of white clover this season. That alone will change what your flock costs you. Then add a layer a year and let it grow into the rest. Before you go, tell me one thing. Drop a comment with what a bag of feed costs you right now where you live. I read every single one, and the numbers people are paying will open your eyes. Then do me those last 2 kindnesses. Hit subscribe so the old ways have somewhere to live after men like me are gone. And share this with someone you know who is still hauling feed sacks. They will thank you for it. The next thing I am going to show you is the bug bin, a single barrel that grows a pound of live protein a day out of nothing but kitchen scraps, and it pairs with this forest like a hand fits a glove. I will see you there. Old ways, real harvests. And remember, the people who fed this country with their own 2 hands knew things about the soil we are only just beginning to remember.